Welcome to our 117th podcast. Today we're talking about change leadership to prevent practitioner burnout. What's one thing you can do to be a better leader and help your colleagues from getting burned out? Keep listening to find out. Welcome to Harmonious Workplaces, a podcast about corporate culture, organizational change management, and workplace behavior. Harmonious Workplaces was started by independent consultants to explore and challenge workplace issues and to build better ways of working. It's a blend of theory and practice, grounded in real-world experience, working with organizations of all sizes across a wide range of industries. If you own a business, lead a team, want fresh ideas about the workplace, or just enjoy listening to consultants talk candidly about how to make work more effective and more enjoyable, we invite you to sit back, relax, and dive in with us to Harmonious Workplaces. Hello, Harmonious Workplaces listeners. Welcome back to our podcast. I'm Rich Cruz, an organizational development consultant. This is Ben Kleinman, our resident certified change management professional. Hey, Ben, how are you?
Hey, Rich. Hey, everyone. Doing well. How are you?
I'm great. On this
Good.
fine summer day in the Chicago area.
Love it.
Yeah. And Ben, last time we were talking about burnout, which is a very real thing. And we provided some resources and we talked about some of the causes and all that.
Right.
But today we're going to kind of focus in on what can kind of those from a leadership perspective. What can the leaders, the sponsors, do to help to mitigate that risk?
Right. And we touched on this very, very briefly towards the end of our conversation last time around what leaders and peers can do in terms of asking each other how we're doing or trying to recognize some of those signs of burnout. I think for today, maybe we'll focus a little bit more on that and not just trying to recognize those signs, but as a leader, whether you have that hierarchical authority or a little bit more of that referential authority, what can you do to just make the environment better so that your practitioners don't get burned out? And if you start to recognize those things, how can you start to really affect change in the environment so that people aren't getting burned out?
Right on.
As a leader, you would have that authority.
Sure. And there are, we hear so much today about empathy and, that being part of EQ.
Sure. Emotional intelligence. Right.
So
self-awareness is another term people use.
Sure. And there's a lot of research out there. We see, I've seen it in Forbes and Fortune, and of course, ATD. Thank you very much, ATD, again for letting us to write for you. But
ATD being the Association for Talent Development.
Talent Development. That's right. Yeah. And so we see a lot of that, right? But when we have as a leader, right? When someone comes in and says, like, I'm so burned out, my job sucks, right? Like, how do you react to that? I think really says a lot about culture, and culture is a huge aspect. ACMP's, the Association for Change Management Professionals talks about culture significant in the standard, right? About you have to set up the environment for change, and that's a big component.
Right. And also just a big part of the ACMP's framework or their standard for change management is to do a lot of work up front in terms of assessing where the organization is and figuring out relative to what you're trying to do, what change you're trying to do, where that organization is in terms of its readiness to do that thing.
Right.
And so part of that very much is assessing the culture of the organization, looking at the organization's history with change. They're assessing the leadership and the stakeholders and all of their abilities with communications and training and all of those things, just so you understand this baseline. But a huge part of that is the culture. And is this a culture that has done well with change? Is it a culture that is is it a culture that's at a point where it can process yet another change? Or are they overloaded because they've already got 17 changes stacked up, or they just came off of a huge change and now they have no more tolerance for another huge change right away? They need a little bit of a break. So it's all those things that you're looking at assessing. And so I think part of the first, if we're talking about leadership responsibilities, being a good leader, a good steward of your resources, thinking about being a good steward of your people resources, in our case particularly, you have to understand that just like you would never, in the olden days, if you watch a Western movie,
Oh,
you would
those olden
always,
days. Okay, I thought you were going like 80s, 90s, but like
oh,
1880s.
no, we're not quite at the neon green yet.
Right on.
You'd
Okay.
go, you'd ride your horses only so far, and then you'd recognize and you'd know that if you rode any further, that horse is just going to collapse. And so it sort of became the same thing with cars. If you drove your car any further, the engine would overheat, the oil would burn out, whatever it was, you'd have to pause and refresh the horse. You'd have to pause and refresh the car. Now, cars have gotten a lot better. I'm not a horse guy, so I don't know if horses have improved over time in that
Sure.
sense. But
Sure.
you still have to, you would always have to pause and refresh. And so it's the same thing with people. You can't keep riding the people without allowing them to pause and refresh. And so as a leader, just like you'd never run a machine 24/7 without knowing that it could do that and having built-in repair cycles and all of that, you can't do that with your people. And so part of that leadership stewardship is to recognize that you have to be responsible for your people. And maybe that's where we're seeing some of the need kind of present itself.
Yeah. That,
There's an opportunity
that's a
there.
great point, and I love your illustration there, Ben. Before we go to the break, quick little story. Not about horses, but cars, right?
Okay.
To illustrate this, I had a Toyota Celica that I used to uh
Samesies.
what's that?
Me too. Yeah.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah.
It was it had a bad radiator, all right? And so I filled it up with water before I went to work, and it was just enough to get me to work and just enough to get me back. And what happened was, and this is, early on in our marriage, we had no money. But the moment that I pushed it just a little too far was the day that it burnt out and I had nothing left. I couldn't ask any more of it, right?
That was
So
it.
that was it. And
And
then
once a radiator's gone, it's my understanding is that it cracks and you're toast and you have to replace the whole thing.
not just the radiator, like it becomes systematic, right?
It's a
It's a
system that
system.
yeah.
It's a systematic problem.
Yeah.
And we see this in organizations too, right? You drive people, drive them, and come hell or high water, you're gonna get on this, or
Right.
there's some repercussion to it, right?
Yeah.
You will have not only that one person, but the whole engine has the potential
It starts to seize
to
up and
seize.
fail.
Yeah,
Yeah. And then what happens is you sort of, like you were saying, you put just enough water in to get you to your next milestone or your next staging point or, your next overnight stay in a
right.
Western outpost village. But then you have to wait. And eventually, if you push it just a little too far, you're going to get stuck with a busted radiator or
That's right.
a dead horse in the middle of the desert,
Exactly.
whatever that
Pay,
is for you. And
pay
then
attention to the white smoke that's coming. Because
and
if
then
it
you're
turns
doomed.
darker than that, it's
Right.
it's
And
gone.
then you're doomed. And that
That's
really
right.
throws things off. And so maybe I know you want to get to a break, but maybe when we get back to the break, we talk a little bit about some of the ways that leaders can kind of recognize that, but then also um, some more of those consequences of if they don't, what that starts to manifest like, because it's going to show up differently for different projects, different organizations, different people, but just to elevate some of those things so leaders in particular know what to look for.
Sure. I love it. Okay. Let's continue talking when we return. We'll be right back.
Oh, hi. I'm Hermie, the HR hermit crab. So, if you've ever sat in a meeting thinking, are we all talking about the same thing? I have a book that might feel very familiar. In my third cartoon book, Trust Fall Pratfalls, you'll find a collection of short, funny workplace moments. The kind that make you laugh and then immediately think, yeah, we do that. We cover things like unclear priorities, communication that somehow creates more confusion, leaders who mean well but miss the mark, and employees trying to make sense of it all. It's basically a highlight reel of how the heck did this happen? But each story also contains evidence based, valuable information such as simple ways to communicate better, practical ways to support your team, and small changes that make work a little more, well, workable. You can finish each story in just a couple of minutes and actually use the lessons the next day. Plus, it's a cartoon book, so you can leave it on your desk and be the envy of all your cubicle mates. Check out Herbie the HR Hermit Crab Trust Fall Pratfalls, available now on Amazon. Visit www.hermiehrhermitcrab.com or www.harmoniousworkplaces.com/Herbie. Oh, and if you see your workplace in here, maybe don't read it out loud in the next staff meeting. Make change your friend. Bye.
And we're back. All right, Ben. So we've been talking about overcoming, or not really but overcoming and preventing burnout for change practitioners
Right,
from a change leadership perspective, right?
right, right. And we've talked a little bit before. I remember in one of our prior episodes about how you can't really whip the horses faster. After a certain
Right,
point, that doesn't work very
right.
much,
Yep, exactly.
or it doesn't work very well. You lose trust, and at some point, when you lose trust, the whole organization just starts to fall apart.
Right. Yeah,
That's not a healthy culture at all.
for sure, for sure. And if we can bring in a model, we talk about models
We love our
periodically, right?
models.
We
We love
love our
our
models,
frameworks. We love our
right on.
academic theories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the models is it's from ProSci,
Hmm.
and ProSci has their change triangle model, which has a triangle, and inside the triangle, the center is success, right? That's the success is achieving the vision, the objectives, the benefits, right? This is the shared aligned definition of the change's purpose, and it's our ability to actually bring it about, right? And the
Right.
three pillars that allow for success are leadership, sponsorship, right?
Hmm.
Project management and
Hmm.
change management.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
So you need the leaders, just to up level it, make sure I'm understanding. You need the leaders who are going to essentially back it and give you the resources you need. You need
right,
the project management to deliver it technically, whether you're installing a new system or you're delivering a new organizational structure or the new processes, whatever. There's some kind of time, scope, budget, level of
right.
quality, number of people involved, whatever that looks like. That's the just get the thing delivered on
Mm-hmm.
time, on
Right,
budget, within scope at a certain level of quality. Then you
yep,
have the change management side of it, and that change is getting people to be aware of it, to adopt it, to change their behaviors, to start using it, all of those things. And then,
right,
however you help them do that, there's all sorts of tools, assessments, communications, training, stakeholder engagement. We talked a lot about many of those recently, intrinsically motivating them, extrinsically motivating them, all of that. And so, all of that triangle then gives you in the middle that sort of middle pillar, if you will, the success that allows you to achieve your vision, realize your expected benefits.
yeah.
All-
And what, like, one of the things that you said in the previous segment, right, was about change readiness and assessing that.
Mhm,
I
mhm.
remember from a few episodes ago, you defined from the ACMP standard that change resistance, is defined. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's defined as a lack readiness, right? Wasn't that
I think that was part of it. Yeah.
part of it, at least,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, and typically you don't your project managers don't have their finger on the pulse of that, right? Because they're handling largely the nuts and bolts of the project itself, right? And the executive sponsors are not necessarily always in tune with the what's going on with the people, right? I mean, some of
Mhm.
them are managing or leading 7, 8 different projects right at a
Right.
time. So
Right.
um, yeah, but they do have the ability to move roadblocks, provide resources, have the strategy and the guidance, all that stuff.
Yeah. 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 And I mean, you're very on point there in terms of depending upon how big the organization is. You may have several layers between whatever project you're working on, whatever change you're trying to get people to adopt at that sort of individual contributor or manager level is where the change usually hits the ground, and
Mm-hmm.
people have to do things differently at that level. Your senior VPs, your executive VPs, even your associate VPs, they're typically at bigger companies, several layers removed from that.
Sure.
So they're not always going to be as aware of the details. They're not always going to be as aware of every person's reaction to that change, every person's needs for how to learn about it, hear about it, get used to it, get trained on it, all of that, listening to their feedback, incorporating their suggestions, they're too high up. And like you
Yeah.
said, they're managing many, many other large organizational priorities that have their own nuances, and they're all on different cadences, and they're all, probably very important and
Sure. Sure.
significant drivers of the company's future and all of that kind of stuff. And so there's often some challenges if you're having trouble at that um, implementation layer.
Mm-hmm.
What
Mm-hmm.
gets bubbled up, who bubbles it up, how it gets bubbled up, when it gets bubbled up, what's the tone of that, what's the ask. Those can all vary, and that can implement how those leaders perceive what's going on and then respond.
Sure. Sure. And from a leadership perspective, before we went to break, right? We were talking about, you can't just continue to, like you said before, you can't continue to whip the horses, or you can't continue to, drive the car when it's telling you, please stop. I need a
Right,
break.
right.
Right. Same thing with the people. Um, and I recall that I think we've talked about it before, episodes and episodes ago, but about there's a diagram of the full range leadership spectrum. Um,
Yeah,
it's starting often, uh, the laissez-faire,
there's sort of a transactional
yeah, passive
approach
versus
to a
active.
transformational. Yeah,
Yeah, right. Passive
yeah.
versus active on the x-axis, and then on the y-axis, it's ineffective versus effective. And laissez-faire, leave it alone, right? Passive, ineffective as can be, right? Then you have management by exception, active, passive, and active, which is basically something's going wrong. I'm going to step in. I'm going to bark orders, do
Hmm.
whatever needs to be done, and then I'm out again, right? And then there's contingent rewards, which is okay, if you do this, we'll give you that type of thing, right? But we've also talked, so that's very transactional on that side, that passive and effective part
Hmm.
of the scale, where we really need leadership to help us in change is literally, I mean, transformational leadership, right? I mean, because we're trying to do a transformation typically, right? Whether it's tech or process or whatever. And those are individual consideration, intellectual stimulation, inspirational motivation, and then idealized influence at the top. And what are your thoughts on any of that, from a in your experience?
I mean, like most of us that have been around for a little while, I think you see a lot of those different characteristics play out in different people. And so you see some leaders who tend to be very much jumping in, trying to come in and control the situation without necessarily understanding all of the nuances. You see other leaders who are very much inspirational and supportive, and also don't want to get involved. They'll say, I fully trust you all. Let me know if I need to get you more
Sure.
resources. I'll do whatever I can, but you're the experts. You run it, you do it, and you know you need to make it go, or there's going to be some consequences for that.
Yeah.
So it just varies so much based on the organization. But I think
Correct.
one of the things that I've kind of taken away is that things tend to work a little bit better when you have the leadership style that's a little bit more on that transformational side
Hmm.
and a little bit more of the positive active as opposed to the what I'll call negative active in terms of getting in, stirring up the soup, barking orders, throwing out all sorts of urgent deadlines and just kind of getting in to get in.
Yeah.
Seems
That's the
like it
management
works.
by exception thing. Yeah. Right.
Right. And that can be okay if it's handled well, but
Hmm.
if it's managing by exception and then kind of coming in and um try to just take over and essentially shut down everything and just start dictating, that tends to work a little bit less well in
Yeah.
at least in the environments that I've been in where there's been more success. It's been some of those leaders that have been more supportive from the get-go, more believing in whatever their team is from the get-go, managing a little bit more in terms of providing support, providing resources when asked,
Hmm.
and not trying to come in and dictate. They'll come in and try to support, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. And being on that transformational side, I like what you just said there because it's not about how do I say this? It's not about a leader coming in and like actively doing the work for somebody else, right? Because that's not what
It's
we
not their
need.
job, yeah,
That's not
and a
their
lot of
job, right?
times the leaders are so far removed that they wouldn't know how to do. I mean, they
Right.
probably have come through the ranks and they've trained on the right SOPs and work instructions and all that kind of stuff, but they're so far removed
Right.
that if you put them in the seat and ask them to drive the bus, conceptually they know how to do it, but they don't know how to shift without grinding the gears. They don't know how to turn without making it a really painful turn. I mean, it's those kinds of things. They're too far removed. It's
Yeah.
not that they're at fault. It's just it wouldn't work.
Sure. Sure. Exactly. And part of the burnout equation, right, is when people are when there's a lack of control, they feel like they don't have so when they feel like they're either micromanaged or somebody's telling them you have to do it this way or the highway, right, my way or the highway, whatever, but that agency that we've talked about and stakeholder
Mhm.
engagement, right, several times we talked about that lack of agency
Yeah,
um leads to psychologically leads to burnout in kind of a significant way.
sure. Sure. And right alongside with that, I think thinking about things from a leadership perspective, when you have in any change I've been in, there's leaders and there's multiple leaders involved. It's rarely ever just one person. There's usually some sort of sponsorship team
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
cross-functional leaders that all are combining to make decisions. Eventually,
Cutters,
that all rolls
guiding
up to one
coalition,
person.
right?
But right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's maybe the top of that guiding coalition that then frees up resources, tells people within their function that they have to do X, Y, or Z,
Sure.
enables those things to happen. And so what I see oftentimes is that at that leadership level, there's a little bit of misalignment, and that little bit of misalignment snowballs as it percolates down into each of the organizational functions. And so by the
Right.
time you get down to that manager level, individual contributor level, you wind up having these very potentially large differences of opinion about what should be done, how it should be done, all of that. And then as a change practitioner, you're often stuck trying to navigate these very different approaches, very different opinions. And it seems like that dissonance can also be very stressful and very challenging and can also lead to burnout, because at the end of the day, you're having one person say you need to do this and another person say you need to do that. And they're both saying, my boss, who's in VP, EVP, whatever, is saying A, and the other one is saying, well, my boss, who's an EVP, is saying do B. You have this tension, and oftentimes you don't have the wherewithal to resolve it yourself. So now you have to traverse that channel back up.
Right on. Yeah.
The thing I'll add to that is that a lot of the better changes I've been involved in have a good governance structure so that it mitigates some of that, and so that you're getting a little bit ahead of some of those dissonances at the sponsorship level ahead of time. And you're making sure that at that sponsor level, that everyone is in lockstep, and it's at that detailed level that you want them to be aligned. So not just, yeah, we're going to install a whole new IT system, it'll be great. Or, yeah, we're going to roll out a whole new sales organization and they're going to be empowered and we're going to have all sorts of great things happening.
Sure.
It's in the details that they have to be aligned so that when things percolate down, those little differences don't snowball into something much bigger or get amplified into something much bigger. There are differences that can be managed at that team level. And I think some of the better leaders will be able to do that and recognize that when people are suggesting that there's dissonance or discord amongst the team, or there's challenges with a rollout at the leadership or sponsorship level, they'll say, okay, I don't need to come in and fix it for them, but I need to recognize what are we not agreeing on, and how do we agree at that level.
Sure.
So that it's clearer for our people, so that they understand which resources are needed at what time, or those kinds of things. And so there's a governance aspect of it there. It's I'm thinking about that sort of laissez-faire, heavily involved kind of thing. And it's definitely not just set it and forget it and
Right.
want no
Right.
part of it, but it's
Sure.
also not actively driving every day, making every decision. That just
Sure.
doesn't work either.
That doesn't work either. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Let's do this, Ben. Let's take a quick break. I
Yeah.
love to pick up on that after the break.
Cool.
Okay. We'll be right back. Dysfunctional organizational cultures and poorly managed transformations can devastate employee morale and motivation, leading to disengaged employees, poor work quality, and the loss of your best people. The impacts to your organization include high costs, low productivity, and wasted resources. At Harmonious Workplaces, our purpose is to help you build the best workplace possible. We are advisors applying proven organizational development and industrial organizational psychology methodologies to help you become your best organization. We are doers, using time-tested principles to help you execute organizational change initiatives smoothly and successfully. To discover how Harmonious Workplaces can impact your organization, visit www.harmoniousworkplaces.com and book a free 30-minute information session with one of our consultants today. Again, that's www.harmoniousworkplaces.com. And we're back. So Ben, the whole idea of this episode and the last episode, right, is trying to avoid burnout.
Recognizing and then trying to understand where burnout comes from.
Yeah.
And how to prevent it. And
Yeah.
talking today specifically about how leaders can try to prevent it.
Yeah, exactly. And I can't help but to think of, so, in the last segment, we talked about this full range leadership model. We talked about, we talked about that, we have to have sponsorship, change management, and project management aligned for success. But there's several different leadership theories, that are out there, and kind of going along with that transformational leadership, and going along with we talked about even like Casey DeBrian's Adaptex, and then there's the Kuz and Posner leadership, the exemplary leadership, 5 practices of exemplary leadership. And you were talking about this snowball effect, right? Where if we have misalignment up here and things are going downward, right, that just gets bigger, the
It
problems get bigger
amplifies.
and
Yeah.
amplifies, right? So one of these, I think that's fairly common among these models is, having this, um, this inspired vision, right? Crowder talks about, ACMP has that. Kuz and Posner says inspire a shared vision. And then the other aspect of this is model the way, right? So if you have an executive team or leadership that are misaligned, and show that, right, either in their behaviors or in their talk and how they react with other people, it can cause that dissonance that you were talking about, that just again gets amplified as it spills out towards the rest of the organization. So modeling the way, and that's, I think that's that. I'm not going to guess on the idealized influence part of transformational leadership. You know, and then there's enabling others to act, which we talked about, is the um, the giving people that autonomy and the agency to make decisions and do things right, and then encourage
Mhm.
the heart is another one of those aspects that for the leadership, exemplary leadership model. Any thoughts on any of that stuff from your experience and training and all that?
Yeah, it resonates with a lot of what I've seen, with a lot of what we've just been talking about. I mean, it just makes perfect sense. I think it ties in so well to just this idea that you reap what you sow.
Yeah, sure,
And
sure.
I think a lot about modeling in terms of the behavior. If
Hmm.
you have leaders that are um, command and control, very direct and blunt, and don't want to hear other people's opinions, your organization is very quickly going to learn not to speak up. And then you don't find out about things until they blow up. And then it just perpetuates the cycle. Why didn't I hear about this? How could you do this? What's wrong with you? And then lots of dictates about how to do things and get things going again. And
Sure.
invariably, that makes people very, very unhappy and burned out. And people don't like, most people I've worked with don't like being in that situation, I should say.
Yeah.
So that's very adverse.
And on the flip side, I've seen, where, so I've certainly seen that where there's
Yeah, and
this,
on the flip side, it can be really beautiful when it
oh,
works well.
absolutely, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I recall, an exemplary leader, during the pandemic that I reported to, who was always very, even though he was CEO, president, right, and in charge of, the larger organization, um, he had almost no problem, when needed, right, to kind of bring himself into the fold and show everybody, look, we're in this together, not just the talk, but walking the talk too, right, and saying, okay, look, I'm in this with you. What roadblocks? Ask questions. I see that you're struggling with this. What can I do to help? Asking those types of things,
Mhm.
taking notes or having somebody else take notes for him, right? And then coming up with a solution, either taking it to the board of directors, which sometimes had to happen, right? Or so really, trying to exercise that sponsorship, leg of the triangle, right? The pro side triangle, because without all those roadblocks being done, and with people not having that legitimate power, to be able to make those, to remove those roadblocks, you're going to be stuck in limbo, right? Um,
Right.
but he was very, very good at being able to do that, and I've known a handful of other leaders who have done, similar things. So it
Mhm.
can be done, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
And there's an element there of, over time, people have seen that this person was a man of his word, and that he would help activate things and get things, open up resources, unlock funding if that was needed,
right.
enable a little bit of flexibility. If, like you said, during the pandemic, people needed a little bit of extra time to do whatever they need to do to stay safe,
Yep,
or, work off hours, whatever that might be.
sure.
Um, there's that follow through element that just builds so much goodwill and trust and leads to getting things done. Um, the better leaders seem to understand that there are ways that they can help people do what they need to do, and they're just so good at unlocking that within their teams
Yeah,
and
yeah,
allowing the the vision, the objectives, and the the push towards getting those expected benefits to drive everything, as opposed to micromanaging and saying this has to be done in a certain way on a certain cadence, not losing the need to get things done, but not being so tied to a specific way, one and only one way of doing it, that they're really about the end in mind.
hmm yeah. And I'm glad you brought up trust there, Ben, because we had Alex Prassis on
Yeah,
a while ago, right?
yeah.
Alex is the Midwest chapter president
Yep.
for
For the ACMP
Association for
Midwest
Change Management.
chapter, she has her own consulting company. I think she's an adjunct professor. Or, she just did her PhD thesis on trust.
On trust, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And that's a huge element, and it's not just that leaders need to trust people, but people need to trust the leaders and be able to trust each other and trust the process
Hmm.
itself, right?
Right.
And a lot of that comes down to making sure that the sponsor is helping to, because that ultimately people are looking up for that
Right.
guidance and
Right.
inspiration, right?
People are smart, and they're going to see if leaders respond to certain things in certain ways, they're naturally going to start moving in that direction.
Yeah.
And I think one of the other things that I've noticed about good leaders is that they're able to speak to each other in ways that maybe the rest of the organization doesn't see. So maybe it's within a very small sponsorship room, or maybe it's one-on-one conversations, or very, very small groups, but they'll have it out and they'll discuss their differences. And
Mm,
that might be a very calm, rational conversation. It might be a lot more charged than that,
sure.
but they'll figure it out in a way that they understand we as leaders are not meeting the moment, and we as leaders have to figure this out for the good of the company or the good of the stakeholders, shareholders, clients, customers, whatever that is,
Hmm.
because they know that if they don't, it's not going to get their organization to where it needs to be. And so there's an ability to sort of speak to each other at that level that they're able to do while still maintaining a very united front for the rest of the organization. And the
Sure.
better leaders are able to do that. And I think where I've seen a little bit of a sometimes challenges in implementations is that you don't have the leaders either able to do that, or they do it, but it's not an effective conversation. And you still
Right.
have those sort of discord moments percolating throughout the rest of
Yeah.
the team and the project.
Right.
And so
Right.
that then it kind of papers over issue, but it doesn't resolve it. Whereas the
Sure.
better leaders recognize, hey, you know, whatever it is, we got to figure this out. We're both adults. Let's do
Yeah.
this and
Yeah. There's
figure
there's
out
no
how we want to
problem
win.
with
Yeah.
with challenging a process, right? I mean, there's conflict that's going to happen.
Yeah. And sometimes it's
That's
very
even part
good.
of that. Yeah, it can be great, right? It's just how do we the way in which we process that and resolve the conflict is very telling to how well a change can take place, because it does set the tone, to some extent sets the culture for what to expect
Oh,
from
yeah, I would say
employees.
very much so sets the
Yeah,
culture. If you have leaders openly disagreeing and arguing and blaming each other, that sets a very negative tone. Whereas if you have leaders who are, at least in public within the organization, very, very much aligned and singing from the same songbook and preaching the same thing over and over again, as far as these are the goals, here's my role, here's our role as a sponsorship team, here's where we're trying to go, let us, speak all united. That's a very different kind of a thing, and that
for
can
sure.
work really well.
Yeah. Well, Ben, we're just about out of time here, buddy.
We are.
So,
We are.
so
Is
what
there a one thing?
is there a one thing? Um, in my opinion, no. There's there's more than
I thought you
one,
were going to
and
say it depends.
it depends. No, I don't want to say that,
You're going to lose
because
your
it's so.
consulting badge if you
I
if
know,
you
I
don't
hear
say it
that so
depends.
often, right? But um, no, I mean, I think the it just kind of boils down to that, when you have leaders um that are more on that transformational side, that do have some of those qualities of exemplary leadership, and those are learned, right? They're not inherent, right? They can be
Oh yeah,
learned.
all of this can be learned.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Um, that I think is critical, because when we have the sponsorship that people can trust to do the right thing, to treat people in the way that they are valued and respected, right? And that enables that change management part, that people part, that allows the project process to flow so much smoother. Makes
Makes a ton of sense. Yeah. Love it.
Anything you want to add to any of that?
I think it just seems to always bear out that when you have more positive leadership, when you have more supportive leadership, things not they don't always go better, but they they cause a lot less churn and a lot less difficulties, and even they just they make for better organizations.
Right.
And in the long run, that is much better than having a lot of dissonance with your leaders, or having leaders who are very negative facing, or who are
Sure.
very um, dictate focused type of leaders.
Yeah,
Those in the long run tend not to breed better organizations.
that's right. Yeah.
And so I feel like the sooner you as a leader can recognize that, or you as a leader peer can recognize that your leader peers are, not enabling the right behaviors that you want in your organization,
Hmm.
the better, because then you can start to shift that, and you
Yeah.
can start to kind of coach or guide or mentor, or if need be, sideline or get rid of that other leader. And your organization will benefit from it in the longer term.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's like, don't conflate compliance with adoption, right? Because
Or
your people,
effectiveness even.
or
I mean, you can be
effectiveness.
very compliant. You can show up, punch your card right at 8:30 or 9 o'clock. You can sit in your chair and do stuff for 8 hours a day. That's compliant. Is it
Right.
getting you? Are you behaving the way that your organization wants you to behave? Are you treating your customers or clients with the utmost care and respect?
Sure.
That's a different story. Are you
Totally.
happy in your role? Are you coming to work charged and ready to do whatever you need to do and deliver day in and day out and go above and beyond? That's very different from compliance. And
Yeah.
if you, like, we said, if you just want compliance, that's easy.
Right.
But if you want the organization that's behaving well, behaving harmoniously, then
Haha. There you
you
go.
need a different style of leadership. And as a
For sure.
leader, you have to understand that, and you have to
Yeah.
figure out how to get yourself to be that kind of leader.
Right. Right on. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us on this 117th episode of the Harmonious Workplaces podcast. We'd love to hear your thoughts about change leadership and how to
Yeah.
avoid that burnout that is all too common.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure you visit us at harmoniousworkplaces.com. Check out, we didn't even mention Hermie the HR Hermit Crab this entire thing.
No, but Hermie is waiting to be in a cartoon that you tell us to write.
That's right.
There's so much good material here.
Absolutely. Yep.
Boss Beta is just
Maniacally waiting. That's right.
To embody all of those traits.
Perfect. All right, everyone. Until we meet again, make change your friend. Thanks for listening to Harmonious Workplaces. You can find all episodes, resources, and ways to connect with us at www.harmoniousworkplaces.com. If you enjoyed the show, we'd love your feedback. Please rate, review, share, and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. And don't forget to add Harmonious Workplaces to your favorites so you're notified when new episodes are released. Again, visit us at www.harmoniousworkplaces.com.